So this one says, how can you explain natural disasters? Human suffering is one thing, but this is God's beautiful creation that seems to be going so very wrong. So the question is, how can you explain natural disasters when it seems to be God's creation that's going wrong?
Actually, I can be short on that, even though it's probably, if you look at Genesis, however you take the Genesis story, it's teaching us something, that as soon as Adam and Eve turned away from God, 4 things happened. First of all, they were alienated from God. They couldn't stand in God's presence. You call that spiritual alienation. The second thing is they were ashamed and they hid. They hid. That's psychological alienation. They experienced guilt and fear and so on. Then thirdly, they were naked, and then they had to cover themselves because they had to hide from each other. Well, let's call that social alienation. So when they turned from God, their relationship with God broke down, their relationship with themselves broke down, their relationship with others broke down, so there's social alienation. But then lastly, it said that instead of the garden just producing fruit, now you're going to have to labor and in the sweat of your brow, and thorns will come up instead of fruit, and eventually you're going to die. And that's actually, how do I say it? That's environmental alienation. That's natural alienation. The Bible teaches that natural disasters, that the nature is no longer our friend, that we're alienated from it. And very often terrible things happen because it's actually not, it's not in its original order. That is to say, the created order was perfectly harmonious, psychologically, sociologically, physically, and all the relationships have been disrupted when we turned away from God. That's a little harder for us to grasp. I think most of us realize, okay, if I'm a sinner and I'm selfish, I can see why that would lead to murder and theft and so on. It's a little harder for us to see that turning away from God would have actually affected the natural environment, but it's what the Bible says. And I think when you think about how much we are woven into the natural environment, how human beings are absolutely part of the warp and woof of the natural environment, it does make sense. But anyway, that's the answer of Christian theology that over the years has made a great deal of sense to me, though I'm not sure. I had to be pretty brief there. But at least please feed on that, think about that.